breaking down all the plays and getting you in the action. We've got you covered all season long. Welcome to the BCSN Nation podcast, powered by Marco's Pizza.
Oh, it is good to hear that music. The theme music is back after a brief hiatus. The BCSN Nation podcast, powered by Marco's Pizza, is back in your eyeballs or in your eardrums. I am Justin Feldkamp alongside Steve Wronkowicz. And if you're trying to find someone who knows more about high school softball in this area, I tried to give you Mr. Wronkowicz, and he will take on all comers. We are ready to go. Wednesdays at 3 o'clock, this BCSN Nation podcast drops each and every week. So to give you a heads up, in the spring, so we fully transition from the winter to the spring, we're going to rotate. High school softball episode, high school baseball episode. Back and forth we go all the way to what we hope will be the state tournament for one or more area teams on both softball and baseball sides. All right, Steve, so we are a couple weeks in. A number of area teams go on Southern Expedition tours to get the early good weather in the late stages of March, where we've seen rain and snow and all kinds of stuff in our area. But as we tape this podcast, we got 3 straight days, highs of 81, so we're ready to go here in 2023.
You know, we've seen this on the side as far as UT and BG as well, having to play inside early on in the season. You never want to be able to have to do that, but when the weather breaks, it's amazing how much the hitting improves. And you talk about softball, and it's all about up the middle. I mean, baseball is the same way, but it is so important in softball. You talk pitching. You know, if you're going to buy real estate, it's what? Location.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But in softball, it's pitching. And then secondary, A, you got to have a catcher who can catch that pitching, and B, you got to have somebody who can grab fly balls. But when you look at the top teams, I don't care what league it is, whether it's the NLL, the TAC, the track, teams that are going to have success, it's going to start inside the circle.
All right, so all of our BCSN Nation platforms and social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, at BCSN Sports. So just search at BCSN Sports. You got content each and every day right there, and you can get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, and on BCSNNation.com/podcast. We take clips and post them to all of our social media platforms. So we're going to go just one by one. If some of you familiar podcast loyal listeners and watchers, we try to hit on all the different leagues in our area, so we will continue to do that here in the spring with softball and baseball. So in the Northern Lakes League, Steve, we've seen Anthony Wayne, Springfield, Perrysburg. That's the cream of the crop when it comes to the most recent history of those schools and those programs. Not surprisingly, 3 great leaders at the top with great head coaches. But with Anthony Wayne and Springfield, we saw them have some epic battles in 2022. We saw Springfield advance all the way to the state championship, somewhat upsetting Anthony Wayne on the way to doing that. And 34-game win streak for Anthony Wayne was snapped. So a great season ends 34-1, but I think Anthony Wayne is on the warpath to do just the same this year.
Well, they are. And one of the amazing things when you talk to Ron Myers, head coach at Anthony Wayne, when we were prepping for the game earlier on in the season, when we did the Whitmer and the Anthony Wayne game, the information that comes from Ron Myers, he's not afraid to say what's going on. And that is, I'm loaded, is what he said. He's absolutely loaded. You talk about just absolute filth of riches. When you talk about 2 pitchers, 2 high-quality pitchers, it doesn't happen very often in high school softball, and he just absolutely has 2 of the best. There's no doubt about that. And he can just flip-flop Cat Myers, and it's quite amazing what you have inside the circle for that particular team. Very similar as Matty Yackey as well for Springfield. So you talk about a battle. It's going to be huge coming up next week.
Yeah, Brooklyn Patchen is the other one that you're talking about with Anthony Wayne. And you talk about the embarrassment of riches, the amount of Division I college softball players that are on that Anthony Wayne team. I mean, keep in mind, this team last year, which pretty much is intact aside from a couple seniors from 2022. This was a nationally ranked team, not just a state-ranked team or a regional top 10 teams in our area, this was a nationally ranked team.
They were nationally ranked. They were number 1 in the state of Ohio to finish up the end of the season. And you talk about being upset by Springfield. It's just one of those things that they flipped the script from 1 year ago, because Springfield really was on top of the league. They had everything going for them, and Anthony Wayne came and kind of stole the thunder from them 1 year ago. And then last year, it was just absolutely the opposite. Anthony Wayne had everything going for them. Nobody ever figured that they were going to get beat. They were going to be heading to Firestone Stadium. It's going to happen. And then all of a sudden, Springfield comes up and just absolutely steals their thunder.
And you mentioned it briefly there. They will go head-to-head next week, Wednesday, April 19th. And you can bet that that game will be live on the BCSN Now app. That's Anthony Wayne at Springfield over there on Albon Road. Such a great Springfield sports Blue Devil complex out there with all the different spring sports. That's a 5 o'clock first pitch, and I expect that one, just due to the recent history and so many of those players coming back, should be a battle and an intense atmosphere and a crowd surrounding those fences. Absolutely, and the funny thing about that is we talked about this last year when these two met for the last time, how we thought that it was going to be a 1-0 game. Could have gone 10, 12, 15 innings, you would think, with the pitching. Never turned out that way. Of course, the hitters showed up, and it just kind of blew that whole thing out of the water. So you never know how it's going to quite go with those two teams, especially when you talk about Springfield. This is a team that hits home runs like no high school team that I have seen around here for a long time. They were just amazing at finding a way to get the ball over the fence. They were very good at it. Yeah, Coach Rob Guadz, he's a tremendous leader, has built that program for 2+ decades. They challenge all of the players. The expectation level, he says, never changes. Fear that tradition. No matter what roster he has, he would say this: if you got 15 freshmen, he would say the expectations are still to win the league and advance far into the tournament. But yeah, you're right. Maddie Yaki, you touched upon her. She's a future University of Toledo Rocket, and then a number of other key players. And what I always like about Springfield is it's not when they're good, it's not only when they have all juniors and all seniors. They have freshmen who come in and play key roles. They'll have a sophomore who comes in and starts and plays significant innings and gets the job done.
Well, I always say that there's no such thing as freshmen. I don't think there is freshmen in any sport anymore, but it seems to be in softball and baseball with all the amount of games that these players play during the summer. When you're not in high school time, they'll go out and they'll play 50, 60, 70 games during the summer season, and then they'll show up as a freshman. They're not a freshman. They've spent all summer in high-leverage situations. So you can continue to just retool and keep bringing these kids up. I don't know where he keeps finding them. Yeah. He and Meyer as well. Between Anthony Wayne and Springfield, they're just a glut of great players.
Yeah, personally, I just think it's you build it and they will come kind of thing. That people want to be a part of successful traditions where it matters, where people come out and attend the games, where you have someone to look up to, and you build that youth organization within your local school district, and then people attend those games when they're 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, and then they hit the high school ranks and they are ready to go, and they've been looking and aspiring to join that type of program. So, all right, so the NLL looks to be Anthony Wayne in Springfield. Let them battle it out during the regular season. Could see each other in the postseason, just like we did see them do that last year. As we move from the NLL to the track, the Three Rivers Athletic Conference, we've said it each and every season here, the final edition of the track as it dissolves and teams disperse to different leagues and organizations and conferences beginning in the fall of 2023. In the track, Whitmer is projected to be the winner. They are a team with a new head coach, Dwayne Lanham, retired from his position. Now with us here at BCSN, a great get for us because he knows his stuff. So if you haven't seen him yet, check out some of the BCSN high school sports broadcasts on the softball side. We are happy to have him. But with the track, what have you seen thus far? We'll start with the projected winner based on the coaches' polls in the Whitmer Panthers.
Yeah, Whitmer actually got to see them against Anthony Wayne, and it was not one of their better efforts. Of course, it was a terrible day. It was just the wind was blowing 40 miles an hour in, not going to be conducive to hitting the ball hard. But when you look at what you've got in the track right now, it's going to be kind of the top two. I believe Whitmer is probably going to be the team that's going to end up, when all is said and done, they're going to probably win the track. You got to look at St. Ursula as well, though. St. Ursula is a program that has been kind of refining themselves over the last 2 years. And in high school sports, lots of times you have to kind of rebuild. You'll have a great sophomore class. You'll have a great junior class. There we're in a program about 2 years ago where things were kind of bare, but they've done a really good job of turning things around. This could be a very surprising year for them. St. Ursula, that's a team to watch that I think could finally make a way to the top of the track.
Yeah, for some of our listeners and or watchers, or especially those that follow the game of softball in our area, you talk about the embarrassment of riches at Anthony Wayne. I would say across our entire area, go up into southeast Michigan, and even a little bit west of here, some teams just outside of our BCSN footprint. I'm just going to list off the names and you add to it, Steve. Okay, we got Sophia Wygast at Whitmer. She's going to Penn State. We have Macy Chamberlain at Evergreen. Has she signed yet? Is she committed yet off the top of your head?
She has, but I did not know where she's going.
I'm going to have to look that up. We got Allie Van Brandt at Whiteford. They went to the state championship, state tournament in Michigan last year. She's going to Indiana. We had Brooklyn Patchen going to Creighton from Anthony Wayne. We have the Myers sisters, one committed to Michigan, one committed to Ohio University out of Anthony Wayne. But my point is, so many top-tier, not just lower level college or Mid-American Conference, no shame or shade at them, but top Power 5 programs are being, their rosters are going to be filled with Northwest Ohio ties.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about Chamberlain from Evergreen. I think that's one that a lot of people kind of miss because of that NWOAL kind of, being on the fringe of our viewing area, being on the fringe of getting a lot of press. But she's somebody who is extremely good. You talk about that up the middle kind of work, and that catching position is so important. And you can find a catcher who does defense well and who can hit like she does. And it's not surprising that she's going to go to a huge school as she graduates from high school.
Penn State. She is also going to Penn State. So Macy Chamberlain and Sophia Wygast, I take that back as I got confused with Penn State. Macy Chamberlain, yes, is going to Penn State. Sophia Wygast is committed to Akron. So my apologies to Sophia. But regardless, the point still stands. So many top-level athletes on the softball side here in our area going to top-level colleges. Okay, so Steve thinks Whitmer should be that choice, but watch out for St. Ursula. Let's go to the TAC. Recent projections from the coaches. Northwood is expected to repeat. They had a solid season last year, but what do you think as we sum up the first part of the TAC season?
Well, again, you look at this particular team, and Jennifer Noonan has done such a good job. This is her 11th year there, and again, this is a program that had a little bit of ups and downs. About 4 years ago or so, they hit a little bit of a lull, but she's done such a good job rebuilding that team. I really don't see anybody else at all in the TAC who's going to be able to make a run at them. So unfortunately, I guess there's not going to be a whole lot of doubt in my mind, but they are just absolutely loaded when you compare them to everybody else in the TAC at this point.
I think maybe the same thing could be said, Steve, within the City League with Start. Start has been there, done that in the recent 4 or 5 years, and expectations so far would lead you to believe that the Spartans will come out on top once again.
Most likely, the only one that really puts in any kind of look like they're going to make any kind of headway there might be Bowser. This is a team that, again, at times has really shown some spurts of being able to find a way to be able to get some wins. I don't particularly see that this is going to be the year for Bowser, but if there's going to be a surprise in the City League, I would say it's going to be the Bowser Blue Racers. That's still hard for me to say.
Yeah, the Snake Pit. Yep, you got to keep that in the back of your mind. No longer the Rebels. They are now the Blue Racers. Okay, in the Northern Buckeye Conference, we have Rockford in our BCSN footprint, but a number of teams in the Northern Buckeye Conference play those crossover games against conference teams that are within the Hyper Toledo market. So Eastwood, we have seen that coaching staff build a solid program. One of their former players, went to University of Toledo, then transferred to Rutgers to follow the coach when she left UT to go to Rutgers. But Eastwood has kind of been there, done that. They've gone on deep tournament runs, and Rossford appears to be in the middle of the pack, if you will, so far. But Eastwood is the cream of the crop.
Eastwood is a very good school. They're great at softball. You talk about Rossford a little bit, and I know Rossford.
Yeah.
My kids went to Rossford. My daughter played for Rossford many, many years ago now at this point. And Rossford just has a hard time being able to find that 5th, 6th, 7th player that's going to spend a lot of time in the summer, honing their skills. They can find 2 or 3 players. They can find some good pitching, but they just don't have the depth usually in the roster to be able to make those long kind of runs. And that's where Eastwood has kind of changed things out. You got to have that culture. You got to have the ability to have some summer work. You've got to get those games under your belt. Eastwood's able to do it with their players. Rossford has not been able to find the way to do that lately.
All right, so we got Anthony Wayne, Whitmer, Northwood, Start, and Eastwood as the prohibited favorites within each of their conferences or leagues. So we're going to pose this into our next segment. We're going to go to our question of the week.
It's time for the BCSN Nation Podcast Question of the Week. Send us your question on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook using the @BCSN Sports and #BCSN Podcast.
All right, so as we continue here on the BCSN Nation podcast powered by Marco's Pizza, I'm Justin Feldkamp alongside Steve Wronkowicz as we've debut our spring edition of the podcast. We're talking softball, then baseball from now until June. So let's pose this question to you, Steve. We have kind of touched upon this question throughout the first part of this podcast, but who are your picks, Steve's picks to win each league or conference in our area? We'll start back up with the Northern Lakes League.
The hardest one first. When you got 2 teams with the quality of Anthony Wayne and Springfield, it's tough to say who's going to win the league. I think Anthony Wayne will win the league, but it's going to be very tight. I think the 2 teams will split their 2 games against each other. They'll find themselves seeing each other again for a 3rd time. That'll be the interesting one.
A tiebreaker.
But, yeah, absolutely. But I think Anthony Wayne will come out ahead. They just have too much. When you have 2 inside the circle that can be as good as Patchen and Myers, it's tough to get any kind of losing streak, if you will, if they have any streak. You got to realize right now, this is a team that has not lost, and they've not given up a run, and every game that they have won so far has been only a 5-inning game.
Yeah.
Every game by mercy.
Run rules. All right, in the track, the projected coaches winner is Whitmer. Do you agree or disagree?
I think Whitmer will find their way. It's been tough early on in the season. I think they're getting used to having Cassie Wagner running the ship as opposed to Dwayne Lanham. I think they will figure out a way to do it. I still like St. Ursula being kind of a dark horse, but I think Whitmer will come up and find a way to win. All
right, in the TAC, Northwood, the projected winner. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, again, I got to go with that. I think Northwood just is too well loaded. They're a team that has shown over the years that they know what they're doing. They've been there before. They're going to do it again. I have to say yes.
All right. In the City League, Start projected winner. Are you going to stick with that one?
Yeah, I think Bowser has a slight ability to maybe make a run, but I just don't see it on a consistent basis. So, yeah, I'm going to have to go with them again, Start.
All right, and then lastly, in the Northern Buckeye Conference, you said Rossford described what their program is like in 2023. Eastwood, the projected winner. Do you see anybody in that league rising up to challenge them?
This is where I'm going to go out on the limb a little bit. I think Otsego has a chance to do that, and I think that they're going to find a way to be able to get the victories out of this thing. It's going to be tight, but I'm going to go and I'm going to pick Otsego. I think they may find a way.
All right, we'll see what happens. And then Steve may be on the call. Do you know yet for Springfield Anthony Wayne next week?
I don't know for that.
We don't know yet. Okay, but regardless, you're going to see Steve and his smiling face on a number of BCSN softball broadcasts, and he'll be with us here on the podcast throughout the spring and summer months as we talk high school softball. We're hard-pressed to find anybody else who wants to talk high school softball and high school baseball in this format in the podcast setting. So that's what we here at BCSN are all about, showcasing local teams, local schools, and local student athletes. Steve, thank you for joining us. First time around here on the podcast. Again, I'm Justin Feldkamp. Thank you for watching and or listening to the BCSN Nation podcast powered by Marco's Pizza. Check out all of our games in our schedule at bcsnnation.com, bcsnnation.com. We will see you next week when we turn the page over to baseball. So join us next week, Wednesday at 3 o'clock. See ya.